All right. Hello and welcome back to the channel with me, Coach Jason. I'm the creator of Live Action Fitness and founder of Adaptive Movement. I'm joined here today with Chris Bunge. Please introduce yourself, Chris.
Well, nice to see everybody. I'm a storyteller for the Dragons Concord. I'm excited to be part of the Live Action Fitness Memorial Day event.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm looking forward to this. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you became a storyteller and how you first got into Dungeons and Dragons.
So, actually, I learned to play Dungeons & Dragons when I was 8 years old. I was taught by it's on 2nd edition when I was 8 years old. I remember my dad throwing me into my halfling rogue into jail when I was 8 and like being stuck there for a long time. It was a formative experience. After that, I've been really playing for, I'd say, 20 some years. I've been running games for 20 some years. Family's very nerdy family. And I've been writing for the tabletop game industry for a little over 10 years now. I'm a game designer. I've written for several. I've written for Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, several other systems. And over the last 2 years, I've been a writer and storyteller for the Dragons Concord, which is a local gaming shop specializing in providing professional storytellers to run games in the Fairfax area.
Perfect. So your dad actually got you into D&D, huh?
Yep. Yes, he did. At 8, I did not know what I was doing, but like I got the bug and I played ever since.
Exactly. Once you try it, it's like a whole new world opens up and you just keep exploring, right? It's a ton of fun.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how did you make the leap from player to running your own games, being the game master, and then, I guess later on you got into game design?
So I think for me, when it first started, it was like, I loved being a player, of course, I loved doing that, but like I had all these stories and scenarios I really wanted to see. And of course, with other people running, I didn't get a chance to tell my stories. So I've always loved writing, but especially as a kid, I really struggled with ADD and sitting down and writing anything at length. So I would get like 1 page, 2 pages, and like get frustrated and leave. Dungeons & Dragons gave me a chance to tell those stories much more freeform with my friends and everything. And that really, so like once I went from player dungeon master, I was hooked. Like I was the forever dungeon master, and that's really what I still like to do, is specifically tell the stories, although I'm like playing too on occasion.
Yeah, it's fascinating to make that leap. We always need more dungeon masters. You can't play the game without one. You need some group of players, but without the dungeon master, you're really stuck. So somebody's got to step up and lead the session there. So I'm really excited to have you come in. We're planning and preparing for a Memorial Day one-shot where you'll be the game master or storyteller, as you call it, over there at Dragons Concord. So what we're doing, we're running a new system called Live Action Fitness. Our game masters are called tour guides. So you'll be the tour guide for Memorial Day, and then I get to be a player instead of the forever game master. So I'm really looking forward to this. Now, how would you briefly describe being a storyteller, being a game master? What is your role in the session? How would you put it?
So I think honestly, like, people get really hung up on the role of the storyteller or the game master, and think of it as this really intimidating thing. To me, I mean, you get to have the most fun. You get to tell you get to create the entire scope of the adventure. You get to populate it. You get to play every other character except the player characters themselves. You're everyone else you get to interact with. So you like the acting part, you get to do all that too. So for me, like, it is getting those ideas out of your head of these great stories you want to tell, and working with the players to help make that story real, and that story real, interesting, and engaging. So I actually work like at the Dragons Concord. I do a little bit of I'll do some training on new GMs, how to get them involved. Some of the like players who've always wanted to be a GM, and to demystify that and take away kind of the fear, the overwhelming nature, because it can be, if you get in your head about it, it can seem overwhelming. I have a lot of fun.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's something we'll have to touch back on another day, where you're helping players make that, that leap that seems scary some people where you go from just being a player, like, all right, you're receiving the scenario and responding, making your choices. But now when you're in the driver's seat there as the dungeon master, it's a different thing, so we want to help more people run their own sessions. So I think that's really cool that you're kind of helping to like train new people, give some guidance. There's always people we see online. I'm sure you're probably plugged into a lot of D&D stuff, that's online. There's a lot of, hey, I'm a new dungeon master. Like, does anybody have any tips for me? Because it's very much in art form. It's not a science. There's not one way to do it, so we have to give a little bit of guidance, and they get some experience. You got to get your toes in the water. So that's something that we want to be doing more of as well in the future, you know, creating more tour guides, as I call them, storytellers,
Yeah.
as you call them, over at Dragons Concord. And then we can have more people running the sessions, allow more people to play in the games, and then the adventure just grows from there. So that's really awesome. Now, you mentioned doing some game design and RPG writing. I mean, how did you get into that?
So again, like 'cause I've been playing forever, I've always enjoyed writing, and so I always kept an eye out for like small, short freelancing gigs with like writing articles. I started writing it for Ian World magazine,
Oh, really?
specifically their Trail Seeker imprint, which involved Pathfinder was specialized for Pathfinder 1E. As no, it got discontinued. But I started my first real writing was for them. I kept writing, and then I just started picking up little like projects here and there. And for me, it allowed me to like mess around. I really got getting into the nitty gritty of how games work, how to do cool things with them. So I've been doing that for years now. I've written several supplements. I've written Adventure for Technical Entertainment, and then a couple years ago, I started working on my own miniatures game. And that's when I spent several years working on that. And so the Haltime miniatures game is going to see publication by Blackside Studios later this year.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
yeah, so like that's I think that there's a different types of GMs kind of thing. There's some that like the rules are there are those who get really hung up on mechanics and like really hung up on the can the thing should work this way. There are some that like the story it's all about the story and like they'll bend the mechanics, in service of the story. And I get that. And I think while I play fast and loose, like I just like what you can do with cool mechanics, but I don't, they also should serve the story. You can bend them and change them. As long as you don't break them, you can have some fun messing with how the game works. To me, it's a tool set. It's like building a Lego set. I can mess with the pieces and make something different and cool. So
Yeah, no, I love that. I see it the same way, where some people are really, overly rigid. That's one of the, sort of, I don't know, say like a pitfall, where they're like, well, the book says this. So, it's like the iron law and it's gonna, would have been fun if we did it differently, but that's what the book says. So we got to do it like that, like almost like the rules lawyer. But even worse, if you're the dungeon master, you're so rigid and strict. And so that's part of where D&D comes in. So many benefits, but you got to be a little flexible and kind of go with the flow, but also you've got some structure, you know? You can't just do anything, right? There is some structure to it. So that's where the art of the game design comes in. So really cool that you
that's
got
it.
into that and writing supplements and stuff.
So that's why I think that because I think one of the reasons I like to address that is I think it's one of the things that holds hey it stops new game masters storytellers starting off. They're like I have to memorize literally every rule,
Mm.
literally every permutation. Like I have to have every spell in my head to be a good game master. Because the worst thing in the world, the player calling me out if I miss a rule or miss, and that shouldn't hold you back. And I mean, good players should just and like remind you to help and everything, but also accept the GM can take liberties with the system. The system is there to serve, not be like beholden to.
Yeah, that exactly. Because really, it's an interesting game because, we're sort of all on the same team. We're all having fun together, right? You're facilitating the whole saga, this whole adventure, So as you're running the game, it's not like you're introducing these mechanics like, oh, you're not the bad guy. You're not like trying to defeat the players, right? Where they're like, oh, no, you can't do that. That's against the rules because, it's like some bonus action, I'm out of range, or he already did that. They're gonna hit you with some like you misquoted the rule book, like shame on you. But really, it's like you got to go with the flow, as the player. Like that's where listening comes in, right? Listen to the dungeon master and play off of it, right? Like yes, and kind of go with the flow instead of trying to be so rigid and restrictive with it, so very much in art form, but they gotta realize I think they gotta realize you're not the enemy, right? They're not fighting against you, even though you might be playing as the bad guy at the moment. You're playing all the good guys, all the bad guys, everyone in the world. But it's not like us against them, as we're the dungeon master and they're the players, like try to defeat them and foil all their plans and make sure that nothing they do works. Like, oh, you thought you were so smart. Uh-oh. We're just crushing their dreams. But it's like we're all working together here. And so it's a little different. You got to get out of that headspace, as a player sometimes. And I think a lot of it, it can come from maybe playing video games sometimes where there are rigid rules and there is a structure to it, and the bad guys are just trying to defeat you and you're trying to make your way through the level, and they sort of think of you like antagonistically.
Yeah.
I think that kind of comes from video games sometimes. I don't know. Have you ever thought about that?
So what I really like to refer to, because I'm actually writing a book on storytelling as well as one of my side projects, specifically storytelling in role playing, and I use the term collaborative storytelling because I wanted to demystify that like us versus them mentality they get to, where like, because there's especially old school D&D the players are expected to like be beaten down by the dungeon master, and they only survive by their wits and will alone.
Yeah.
And that's no, both parts are working together to tell a story. And the whole importance is the story being a good one and everyone having a good time and wanting to come back for more. I think some people do enjoy that. Like, it's really hard if I win. I feel it's great, like, playing like Dark Souls or something, where
Mm.
like everything's hard. And like, if I succeed, oh, that's a great achievement. But I think that is only a small group. Most of us want that give and take and want to work with our GM to do some cool things with our characters and move the plot along. So we're all, yeah, exactly what you're saying. We're all on the same team to create a fun story.
Right, right, exactly. So now one other thing before we get into our prep for Memorial Day, we're going to be doing a one shot. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. We're going to dig into that and the combat system and stuff like that. But now, when I, first met you and got in touch with some of the guys over there at Dragons Concord, so go check that out if you're around, the Fairfax, Virginia area. It's an RPG super center, right? Gaming place. You can go there, right? Sign up for some one shots, try some campaigns. You also have board game night. You're doing all sorts of, special
Games, you
events,
name it. Yeah, we do
Yeah.
conventions several times a year. Check out our website. We got a Discord, jump on, bunch of stuff going.
Yeah, exactly. Even like I see miniature painting, like all these kind of other related type stuff to the gaming, that we're into, right? That'll be awesome, probably do some like world building, stuff like that. Be tons of fun. Like it's a creative art, right? It's a creative process.
Right.
So I first got in touch with you to run some games, and then learned that you're also like me, you're into fitness and you're a trainer, you're a personal trainer. So, how did you get started into the fitness world? Because I don't get to talk to too many people who are, it's like a Venn diagram where we've got both worlds have collided here.
That very thin overlay
Yeah,
zone between
yeah,
personal trainer and storytelling. So I've always been a nerd. Obviously, I started playing D&D when I was 8 years old. Like, I've always been really into, and like, I didn't want to go out play sports. I wanted to stay inside, roll dice, and play video games and everything growing up. And like that, why go outside? But honestly, I credit my mom for like, because I live up country, just like go outside, play the, make up something that like to foster creativity,
mm,
actually making us be physically active to engage our brains and not instead of just watching TV or playing video games. But it was really actually like I didn't really get into it until college, as a form of like for me as stress relief. Like I had a stressful education. I'm trying to hold down a side job. Like my release was hitting the gym and staying active, running. Yeah, so I started like it, got really into it, and then I started helping people out. They're like, "Hey, I want to get into this for my health. I want to get into this for my relaxation, everything. Find a healthy hobby that helps me deal with my stress." And that's when I finally found myself on the instructive end. And then I had a job for many years that I really didn't like. And they're like, "Hey, you love doing this personal training thing. Like you love helping people out. You love helping others get fit. How about you go do that? How about you see about getting a certification?" So I got into personal training. I was only 4 years ago now. But that really allowed me to use something I love doing already and share it with others. And I've seen a lot of positive results, just actually, and directly helping people. Especially my specialization is in functional training. So like helping people who might have injuries or the aging senior population, and helping them stay active and stay mobile. And like that to me is so much more rewarding than strictly like top level athletic performance. Like it just felt like I really was helping people. And so like it was and also every like personal trainer I've ever met is just an incredibly enthusiastic, helpful person who just like wants to see others succeed. And I went for an office job where everyone was just miserable. So to me, it was such a positive change for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I have a, similar story as far as discovering it more so in college where, it's like this is something that's great, makes me feel better, gets me moving, helps me manage stress. And so really cool, that you're a trainer, 'cause that's what we're doing here as well, helping other people hit and accomplish their goals. They're on their own, hero's journey. Like they're leveling up, right? That's the whole
Exactly.
point, right? So that's
Yeah.
where this, gets unified together. So, we're going to be running this new RPG, live action fitness. So it does combine movement and role playing games. So everybody, you create your own character. This is like the new version of you. It's like 2.0, right? Update, right? You're learning new skills, new habits, you're on the move and taking action. That's one of the things that we're doing as the storytellers and tour guides here. We're helping the players decide for themselves, right? Like, are you come to a fork in the road? What are you going to do, right? Uh-oh,
Yeah.
you've got a challenge here that we're presenting, right? Princess has been kidnapped, so and so's gone missing, can you help me oh, there's a treasure map, like how are we going to navigate through this scenario, right? And the players are the ones who are empowered and we're the ones, we're just helping them see what the options are and kind of figure things out for themselves, and it's the same with fitness, right? Like you're the one who's getting stronger, you're the one who's lifting the weights and stretching and learning, these new habits and just recreating yourself and just being your best self, leveling up, and you get moving. So it's really cool that
Exactly.
you're able to do that. So that's why I think, you're like the perfect guy to lead the one shot here, It's all about helping the players
Exactly.
level up, right? So speaking of which, here you see behind me, all right, this is actually an in-game location. This is
Flying.
our headquarters here. So for Memorial Day, we are going to be agents of the Bard's College Adventure Academy. And this is our headquarters right behind me. And it's located on the island of Haldrathine. So, to get a little bit more into the game here, we're playing in a world called Aeronoth. Aeronoth. So, that is created by Matt Click. It was a big inspiration for me. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. They do online gaming and stuff, and he collaborated with some of the other players. They actually started their own publishing company. It is called Absolute Tabletop. So if you want to check out the world
Check it out.
map and yeah, the campaigns, they've developed several different supplements. Aeronaut's just one of their worlds. They've all kind of collaborated together, publishing several books and modules, supplements for, people like us, dungeon masters to use. So that's part of where the setting comes from. So I want to give full credit there. Is a big inspiration for me just watching their campaign, and then they were entrepreneurs as well, so not just creative in terms of running a D&D game, but then they decided, you know what, let's do our own world building, let's publish supplements, do the writing, really get out there, create some products. So it's been a huge inspiration for me. So that is the setting, right? Now we're in their world of Aeronaut, but I created the Bard's College Adventure Academy, and that's what you see behind me here today. So we'll do a little bit of, one of the first things you do, you get your invitation letter in the mail from President Bowen, president of the Bard's College there, as he notices your potential. Little letter arrives in the mail. You open it up and says, we've noticed you have great potential that has been brought to my attention, and you are hereby invited to become an agent of the Bard's College Adventure Academy. So if you choose to accept, you will find Aunt Edna down south in the jungle of Keld. And your first mission is to find Aunt Edna and her walking hut. And she will take you to the rendezvous point, which will be on the shoreline. From there, you'll be picked up by a pirate ship known as the Siren's Regret, and it will take you to the island of Haldrathine, where you will find the Bard's College Adventure Academy. So that is what all of our players use to get started. That's their invitation. And so first mission is to get to the Bard's College. All right. So after we get there, you see, of course, that's headquarters. It's a little bit like Hogwarts, if you're familiar with Harry Potter, of course. You've got all these different teachers and faculty members, and you can go to all these different locations, which we'll be exploring there. So you've got the faculty members who are there to guide you. There's Irulan, there's General Declan, all of our main NPCs, and they're like your mentors. They're on your team. They're here to help you level up. If you got questions, you can always go to them. And it's also a little bit like Clue, with headquarters, like this big mansion where you have different rooms, different locations that you can go to, right? That's our home base here, so you could go to the greenhouse, right, where you find the master druid. You could go to the weight room. Maybe you're stressed out, but then you see General Declan in there, and he's the one who's teaching you, combat skills. He's like the knight in shining armor, the paladin here at the Bard's College, and so on. The rogue room, just to drop one last location here, but it goes on, where you can train and, work with the master thief, the spy master named Tisla. And so that is where we'll be starting. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of character creation and combat, but then, you'll be running the game, and we're going to be going on a mission here. All right. So people come in, they have quests, they have missions. President Bowen or someone will be giving them the quest. We got to help so-and-so, we've got the heroes. Somebody needs to save the day. We know who's on the job, right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole framework there. All right. So for me, actually, I'm going to get to be a player here instead of the forever GM. So I'm going to be jumping in. I think I'm going to be making a rogue. All right. So I'll be, for anyone who doesn't know, it's more like I describe it as the sneaky, clever kind of guy. Right? Sneaky, clever, you've got more skills, so kind of like Indiana Jones, where you might be able to navigate through, and look out for traps, work on puzzles, or you might be more like a smooth talker type of rogue. So we've got our basic stats, there's warrior, rogue, and mage, right? And you put them in a rank order. So I'm going to have rogue as my highest stat, and then I think warrior as my middle stat, and mage as my lower stat. So I'll be able to do some magic, but just like a little, right? It won't be as powerful as the other mages of the group, but you can still do a little bit. So everyone's a little bit multi-classed, if that makes sense. You with me? Right? So it's less rigid. So that's another thing that kind of helps people as they're creating their characters. You know, you don't have to read this whole textbook. You just sort of look at all the options and you're putting them in a rank order, first, second, and third. Okay. So it's not so much like picking one and forsaking the others, you know, so you're a combination. So our game is based on largely based on a 1 through 5 scale, right? So your stats are going to be base numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no 3.5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Challenge levels, as well as ranges, you know, like how far away, you know, can I attack? You know, if maybe I'm shooting like a bow and arrow, I'll be like, oh, he's out of range. But I'm looking at the ranges on the board, for example, I'm putting a number on it 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, right? Something like that. So it's concrete. There's a number on it, but it's also almost like a bit of a spectrum. You know, there's a range. And so largely you're judging everything based on that. You know, how difficult is it to climb that wall, right? Break down that door. You know, how far away is he? How powerful is that spell? Stuff like that. You're basically, as the dungeon master, you'll be using a 1 through 5 scale in general. So let me pause there before we get into like combat and stuff. Does that make sense? Or do you have any questions? I know you were able to look at a few things ahead of time, but I just want to see what you think.
So everything seems pretty straightforward there and everything. I played I played that like how I had like 3 stats of like pickup games and everything before.
Right.
Not those exact stats, but like similar design and everything. So I've
Right.
I've been playing games for 20 years. I played a ton of games. So like
Yeah, not just Dungeons and Dragons. So
yeah.
exactly. And that's one of those things that we, you know, we want to clarify because, you know, we have a lot of new people and there are, you know, moms and dads who are signing their kids up and they're not always as nerdy as me or you. So in general, right? Dungeons and Dragons is one of many role-playing games, right? So role-playing games, that's your broad umbrella term, the category. So we're going to be playing a role-playing game. And what's cool is that you've got a lot of experience playing multiple role-playing games, right? Not strictly one version of Dungeons and Dragons. That's what you're saying, right? Exactly.
Yeah, that's Dungeon Dragons is the best name recognition. So like
Right.
typically like they're when I say role play, they're like Dungeon Dragons. Like yes, like Dungeon
Yeah.
Dragons, but there's also a bunch of great games that I just encourage everyone to check out. A lot of great indie games too. So
Exactly, exactly. It's like, you know, we use Dungeons Dragons. It's just the most common term, you know, it's kind of like Kleenex, you know, versus like a tissue or something, right? It's like this is the most commonly recognized thing, so we sometimes just use that term. So, we're playing role-playing games here. So, now with combat and stuff like that, you know, I want to just give you a little bit of prep and then ask you if you have any thoughts on like the missions that we would go on, right? And finish up with that.
sounds
So
good to me.
yeah, we roll initiative. So that's when combat begins in general, or anytime you need to be in a turn taking order. And sometimes I have them roll initiative like even ahead of time. And what we do actually as we get the turn taking order based on what people do, they roll their dice. They actually roll based on their rogue stat because that is based on basically their situational awareness. You know, who's going to be able to react first? Who knows what's going on? So it's more about being aware. So it's partly mental, right? So rogue, you're as a stat, that's more of your mental, you know, awareness, perception, stuff like that. That's when you roll rogue, right? Warrior, of course, more physical, you know, combat and endurance based stuff, climbing a tree, whatever. And then mage, of course, that's when that's your magic spells, right? All your magic stuff. And so we roll our initiative based on our rogue stat. All right. And then we actually do a little musical chairs. Okay. So you actually take your stuff and we're going to sit in the initiative order. Like you're going to physically get up
Yeah,
and
like
move around the table. All right. So then once we're set, we're pretty much good to go. And we're just going to go around in a circle, right? We go clockwise around the circle. So you don't have to like look at the chart and then be like, oh, you had a 17
you
and you
go
had a
and yeah.
13 and you don't have to worry about that. We're going to physically move around the table in the correct order. and make it super simple. Okay. So what I do sometimes, I'll roll initiative for myself, with one monster or multiple creatures, but I may go first if I get the highest initiative roll. But oftentimes you don't get the highest, and even if you do, what I like to do is actually take my turns in between the player's turn. Okay, so we're going around in a circle, right? So then the highest initiative, they'll be on my left because we're going clockwise. And so, all right, this player gets to go first, and then I'll have one of my characters go, say it's one of the monsters. All right. And then I'll bring it to the second player, and then I'll have another monster go, and then I'll bring it to the third player. So we're sort of going back and forth like tennis. And so it's a little bit different than all the players going and then all the bad guys going, right? And then all the players going. So we're going back and forth, right? So the cadence is a little bit different. And then it, of course, changes what happens on the board. And you'll be like, uh-oh, I'm going to, change your plans here, right? So we go around and around in a circle. And now what we do here is we go by rounds. So it'll be the first round, and each player has a set of cards that replaces their character sheet. All right. So they have cards that have their stats. They have cards that have their abilities or any special items they have, maybe some magic potions. That would be on a separate card. And when you're taking your turn, you have basically 3 options. You can take a major action, or you can take a minor action, or you can pass. That's it. So it's really simple. So a major action in general is like taking your attacks or casting a spell, anything that's substantial, more of a commitment. And when you take your major action, you'll take your card and turn it sideways, just indicating that you've already taken your major action. All right. Minor actions, you don't have to turn the card at all. So whether or not you've taken your major or not, you can always do a minor action, right? Unless if you drank the potion, it's already gone, right? That's gone. But we go round and around in a circle until everybody passes. Okay. So let's say we're in a combat scenario. So maybe you're the player, you go, and maybe you're doing something minor, right? Using a minor item or drinking a potion. It's going to like buff you up, or it's going to protect you or something like that. Then we'll go around to the other players, come around, back around to me. Maybe I do some attacks or something happens in the environment. And you see, while we're still in round 1, we will get back to you. And then you'll be able to decide if you want to take that major action or pass, or if you have a different minor action. And then we go around and around again until everyone is done with that round. So I'm either going to pass, like I'm waiting it out, or you decide, maybe I want to take my major action. I want to attack as soon as possible because I want to take this guy down, right? I got to go, strike while the iron is hot. Or do I want to bide my time? Right? I'm going to pass now, and I'm going to wait for it to come back around to me, right? And then I'm going to take my major action, right? And very simple. So that's the basic idea. Then we go around. When everyone's ready, we start round 2 and all the cards reset. And that's it. We go around again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Paula?
Okay. Yeah. See, that's the deal.
Um,
It's supposed to be, sort of intuitive enough, but please.
Yeah. Quick question.
Mhm.
Because you mentioned you go round and round to pass. Is there an upper limit of minor actions that you can take before? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. So some things, a lot of them will be one time for that round. And that's also, where up to your discretion. So sometimes I say, like, this is a minor action that you can only do once per round. Or sometimes I might allow you to do it again, depending on what it is. Like say you're drinking potions, right? You might be able to drink more than one potion in a round, but you might want to put a limit on it. And so part of it is a judgment call, and some of it is more cut and dry. Because let's say you have like a minor, let's say you have like a magic ring of protection, right? But you have to activate it, so your defense goes up when you activate this magic ring, puts like a shield on you. And so, okay, it's my turn. And so I'll have a card for that ring. Okay. But that's a minor action. And so when I take that minor action, I'll turn that card sideways. And so that'll also, yeah, that represents your limitation for taking that minor action. An excellent question. Does that make sense?
Sound good? Yep. Yep.
Right?
I follow.
Exactly. So it's like, oh, you've already used that ring, or you already, threw the net, or whatever you're trying to do, So already use that, and then we'll have to reset. You'll be able to do it again in the next round.
Okay.
Right? Super good question. And so you can kind of move, and you'll see what the cards, show the players what their options are. That's the other thing. It sort of changes what they see as available, sometimes, especially, since we're getting new players in and we're working with kids, like as young as 10 years old, to get started. Sometimes they get kind of jumbled, like when it's all on one giant character sheet and they don't know where to look. I mean, there's a zillion things on this character sheet. And sometimes, they're kind of like, I don't know how to interpret it. It's like a mess, for them as they're figuring it out. So each card just gives them kind of a separate thing to consider, a little chunk of information, and then they can kind of make a better choice with those options presented. Cool?
Yeah.
Right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
All right. So that's good. I just want to make sure you're ready, because I know it'll be the first time, you're running this exact system. And so it'll be a ton of fun. And of course, I'll be there as the player. And so as we run these games, it also just helps to develop all these game mechanics, and I can't wait to get some of your feedback, as a writer and game designer, as we always just make adjustments and fine tune everything and make sure it runs smoothly. Right?
100%. 100%. Yeah.
So it's going to be great. I'm going to be one of the players and you're the dungeon master. So as we're running a mission here as agents of the Bard's College Adventure Academy, do you have any thoughts on what our mission or quest might be?
I do. So the idea is that we have, you're on your way to the Siren's Regret, but you have arrived at the rendezvous point and find that there's no ship there to meet you. You wait all day. It gets dark. A mist descends from across that. You see a strange, ghostly vessel in the mist. And it seems to be partly transparent as it comes towards you, and the wind calls to you in a mournful howl. So you have to discover where the Siren's Regret is if you were able to get to the Bard's College in the first place.
Interesting. Interesting. Exactly. All right. It's like a bit of a ghost ship here. I don't know what we're going to do about that. We'll have to see what happens there.
We just
So
love ghost pirates. So
pirates?
we just love ghost pirates. So
Absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I wonder. Yeah, we'll figure it out here. Don't give me any spoilers, but who knows? Did something go wrong with the Siren's Regret? Is it some other ship entirely? We don't know, but I can't wait to find out. So we'll see what the players do with that here, and it'll be a blast. All right. Anything else that you want to go over or, shout out before we hop off?
So I do want to do a quick shout. I already give you a shout out to Dragons Concord. Please, once again, website, Discord servers, where most of our talk. Go check us out if you're in the Fairfax area at all. We also have some online offerings. There's a lot of talented storytellers there. I also, as well as be a writer and game designer of a podcast host, the Halatai podcast. This is it's a horror podcast. It's definitely for mature audiences, but it's a lot of fun. And there's season up on that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And yeah.
That's perfect. Check out Dragons Concord. They've got the Discord. Hallowtide, right? More of a adult kind of game, horror themed. Going to be a ton of fun. So everybody check that stuff out. And we're doing this game for Memorial Day, but then we're going to be doing all sorts of other adventures, one shots for other holidays, no school days, keep your kids engaged, right? You don't want to just let them sit around playing video games all day. I'll tell
Exactly.
you,
Get them out on
yeah,
adventures.
exactly. And, role-playing games like what we're running here, it's really, I think, one of the only things that kids really do find even more fun and engaging than a video game. And it
It's
might
yeah,
sound too good to be true, but it actually is true, right? Like,
yeah,
get the kids engaged, right? Get in the games, when there's a no school day, weekends, whatever. There are a lot of games that we're running. So get your kids signed up, get them engaged, right? Don't want to just sit around scrolling.
real quick shout out, by the way, back on the Dragons Concord, real quick. Something else I
Yeah.
should mention: we do have a summer program coming up. So we have starting in June 18th. We are running until August. We have a weekly summer camp, which is a Dungeon Dragons summer camp. We come in, play some games, learn more about Dungeons and Dragons, do some fun crafts and everything. Meet a lot of other fellow gamers out there. So
That's perfect. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the kind of thing that I wish I could have done when I was a kid, right?
percent.
Sign your kids up.
Did
Dungeons
not
Dragons
exist when I
summer
was
camp.
young.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
It's going to be awesome. Thank you, Chris. This was a blast.
it's great talking to you.
All
Looking
right.
forward to this.
Yeah. Take care.
You too.